Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Sarah.
And this is our series, Andor, Candor, where we talk all things Andor, the show, on Disney+. And joining us for episode 4, Aldhani, and written by Dan Gilroy, is our friend from Space Waffles, Arezou. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, I am very happy to be back on the podcast.
I don't know if we owe you like a 4th or 5th or 6th timers jacket at this point. I know
I basically live here now.
The jackets are like an IOU item. Yeah, they're coming. We'll pay our debts one day on the jackets for people.
Like a Friends of the Force 5 Timers Club or something.
Don't say that on the pod.
Yeah.
That's going to be really expensive to pay out here.
Listen, I'm not saying when. It could be 80 years from now. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
When we're all old.
I'll hold you to it.
But yes, we are so excited. Episode 4, I guess like the first episode after like the big premiere. So it's kind of interesting that we get to talk about like one singular episode this week and not kind of a whole chunk of them. And it's the beginning of a new arc. But Arezou, what have you thought of Andor so far through its first 4 episodes?
Andor is by far the most intense Star Wars story I think we've had outside of the books. I just feel like, you with the other stuff, you would like rewatch it to kind of just to see it again, to get your highlights, whatever. I have never experienced a Star Wars anything, again, apart from the books, where I have to watch it more than once to process it because it is dense in a good way. It's dense in a good way, but I'm just surprised. Like some of the exchanges, especially in this episode, I'm like deeply impressed at the level of writing that goes into this.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like it is chilling, some of these exchanges. So I don't know, like on a, like the story is great, but just on a technical level, I am extremely impressed.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Technical achievement and like sound writing. The Gilroy brothers know how to write.
Yeah.
Get them to write more Star Wars, or just more. Find the Gilroys in the world who can replicate this, because it's honestly some of the best, just like dialogue. I mean, can you believe in this episode we got the burn of? It took the combined ingredients of idiocy, ineptitude, and total disengagement for this farce to have reached the full apex of incredulous disaster. That's the sickest Star Wars burn ever, is it not?
It's one of those burns that takes the person being burned like 10 minutes to realize that they've been insulted.
The other one that I really liked was rest assured, like you will not be replaced. I have the rest of the line. Okay. You will not be replaced. You have rung a final bell on corporate independence. I was like, roast him.
My favorite was when Daedra is speaking to Levin about getting the information on the Star Path and the information on Ferrix and stuff. And he's got this whole metaphor about the corporate ladder. And the last thing he says to her as she's leaving to go do whatever she wants to do is don't look down.
Yeah.
It's just like,
yes.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah,
God, I don't know. I loved
such
that
a quick
exchange.
Line.
It's quick, but it's like cutting.
Right. I really enjoyed Vel's lines throughout, and the way she like works or attempts to justify Cassian's existence in their new group. And the one guy who is like also an Imperial or is working with them but isn't in the Imperial kind of structure, is like, well, who did this? Who is he? And she goes, he's Clem, he's with us. Like just like the immediacy of the way that she's covering, it was very interesting to watch as the episode progressed. And the actress who plays her is really quick, Faye Marseille, with her replies.
Who's a Game of Thrones
really?
Actress. Yeah, she plays the waif in
I
Game
don't
of
even
Thrones. Who
I honestly don't know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
Westerosies out there. For me, it automatically stands out right away because Susanna White directing, like we haven't gotten a ton of women directing in Star Wars, so we get to add another to the list among live action television, among the likes of Bryce Dallas Howard, Deborah Chow, and Steph Green from Book of Boba Fett. And now we get Susanna White, and like I feel like this episode really had a lot of the women standing out, like between like Vel and Mon Mothma and Dedra and we have Cinta there as well, which is really exciting. So I feel like
Clea.
Yes, yeah, Clea as well, who is possibly a new Glup Shadow. I love her. I love how she's like in the know with Luthen, and like she's totally on board with his operation. That's so cool. But I really feel like what stuck out to me in this episode is just the fact that it's not relying on legacy characters as a series, and we are really building out the world with so many named characters, because we've had the problem with the Mandalorian and how it's like, oh, Frog Lady, the client, the whatever, it's always like and then like a noun, and now we're really getting actual names and lives for these people.
I would argue that we got this episode, strong as it was, sharp as it was, that barely even relies on Cassian to tell its story. He is like in this new arc because he's starting to kind of like get in with the rebellion, even though he's just a mercenary right now. He's already becoming such a part of the machine that like the story, he's not the focus of this particular story. He's part of Vel's plot, and like he's still our point of view, but so much happens without it.
Yeah, it really feels like the center of this episode, and perhaps the center of the arc, remains to be seen, is Luthen and his position within whatever he's doing, whatever his, rebel cell or group is, or whether he's running it on his own. He's kind of the center of the universe for how this particular story sets up between Mothma and him, and between Cassian and him and Vel and that whole group, which based on the trailer footage, I'm really, really interested to see how it all plays out. I don't think it's going to go particularly well. It should be interesting. But yeah, I find Luthen to be a really interesting character in all this, as he kind of brings us as viewers alongside Cassian closer to the day-to-day of what the rebellion or the early rebellion is doing. And it's rather mundane in a sense. Like, I'm just going to go play my artifact broker role, and then I'm going to get a piece of information, and then I'm going to keep going about my day as an artifact broker, So I thought that was very interesting.
What I was really impressed by with this episode was how I was able to juggle so many different points of view. And it always felt like we knew why we were where we were at any given moment. Like, I wasn't questioning it. I wasn't like, okay, like, why are we getting this character at this point? Like, I feel like the show's pacing, again, just continues to be its like strongest asset, in the way that it actually like delivers those lines, like we've talked about, and does a lot of like acting like through like nonverbal moments. The moment that Luthen is dressing up before he lands on Coruscant, right? Like, it's a minute long scene or so, but it's such an important scene for that character. And then we cut away back to Aldhani, right? So just getting that little sliver of his life in that moment is so cool. But do you guys feel like that is, you're starting to feel the pacing of the show like being really strong, and like getting to be on Coruscant, be on Aldhani, be on Morlana, like be with Cyril, Luthen, Mothma, Cassian? Like, it's a lot to juggle, but I think it's doing it successfully. I
would say so, for sure. I think I struggled a little bit with the pacing of the first 3 episodes. It felt like the episodes ended, and I didn't feel fully resolved in the way that they ended with regards to like the tension and where we're cutting. But this episode, I really had no issues with at all. And I felt that I felt like all of the pieces were really balanced, and I felt that I understood where everybody was within the context of the story. So I think it handled everybody well. And it's really saying, as you mentioned before, Arezou, that, the story is almost surpassing Cassian. And we're kind of being able to spend time in all these other places, and we don't necessarily need him, nor do we necessarily want him 100% of the time, because of the richness of all the other characters that we're following.
Mm-hmm. I agree with the pacing in the first 3 episodes, not sort of feeling satisfying if you take them as 3 separate episodes. I think if you take it as like one very long episode, then I think the pacing works. And I think it was very smart of them to release all 3 at once.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yes. The discourse would have been otherwise so bad.
But yeah, I just, in that respect, I agree. And I thought, it's one of those things where when you're in one point of view and it cuts away to another, you're like, right, this, but you're
Mhm.
happy to have gone there. But it's not that you ever felt bored by what was on screen because, like, why are we here for so long? No, you're there exactly as long as you need to be. And then it cuts to the next bit and it allows all the tension of these like four different storylines to build
Yeah.
at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, and none of them feel like tonally disjointed. I just really felt like there was a consistency in like the location, despite like one sort of being a more digital environment and like one being like an on location shoot, which I think is also really noteworthy for this episode. It's like one of the few on location shooting scenes that we've had in Star Wars live action TV. Like the only other one I can think of is in the tragedy in Mandalorian. They shot like I know in California for some of those scenes. But it looked beautiful. Like the show looks gorgeous. Like I'm just impressed.
Oh, consistently impressed with everything, with like the cityscapes, with how they make things look like super crisp, super like dirty and underground, like very, very impressed overall with the would we call it set if it's a digital environment? I don't know.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah, you can.
environments that they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the sets.
I think that I agree with you, Brad, in saying that like the tone across the different stories doesn't feel too disjointed from one another. Everybody or every kind of story in every place has a clear, defined sense of place and space, and they're all distinctly very different from one another. But where it really soars and where you really can feel that connection is just the trajectory where you can all see them going. Your desire to understand more about each of these characters, and I think that's really just singing the praises of everybody on this one, because it's really interesting to see how people are functioning in different spaces. Like getting Coruscant in this episode. Can we just talk about Coruscant as a place?
Yes,
This is not obviously
Capital
not
of the galaxy.
capital galaxy. This is obviously not the first time that we've been to Coruscant. We know Coruscant pretty well, but I think Coruscant in this show is so interesting and dynamic and vastly different from the Coruscant we've seen previously. Because the Coruscant we've seen previously is kind of chrome, and kind of glossy and shiny, even when it's grimy, if that makes sense. Just the colors that they're using, the silvers and stuff. This Coruscant that we're seeing in this show feels so much more brutalist in architecture style and color, and I think that it's just such a compelling choice that it was a little bit not jarring at all, but like a little bit like, oh, this is different. And then I think it did a lot to demonstrate the variety of Coruscant. We can see the different architectures within that same kind of color palette and style. So anyway, I will get off my soapbox about how much I find Coruscant's texture really interesting.
Can I jump on the Coruscant texture?
You can. The stool is big enough for both of us to stand on.
So what I loved about this Coruscant is because, like Sarah said, we know Coruscant very, very well. We know Republic Coruscant very well.
Mm-hmm.
So Republic Coruscant is like the product of hundreds of years of Republic rule. It is, it's vibrant, it's colorful.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us who grew up with the prequels, it feels almost homey a little bit. Like the Jedi Temple is all these warm colors and like warm lighting, and it's the same when like we're with Padme. That all feels very homey. This is, like Sarah said, it's brutal. It's very stark. It's very shades of white and gray. And it sort of reminded me of, I don't know what this architectural style is, but there's an architectural style in Western Europe around the time of like fascism / communism. Do you know what I'm
certain
talking about?
it's actually called brutalism.
Okay, so that is the architectural style. I'm sorry, but like
let me do a Google just to make sure. Yeah, that's like super concrete and really like sharp corners and kind of
industrial and very efficient, and
yeah,
that's what this reminds me of now. This Imperial era Coruscant, and it must be a deliberate choice. But
oh, totally.
I thought that's what makes it so jarring, is because Coruscant is something that is so familiar to all of us, and we now see it after 15 years in someone else's hands, to the point where the lower levels have even been stripped of their character.
Right.
Under the Empire. So yeah, so that's my Coruscant soapbox.
Yeah. Sarah, you said it's like, you described it as like a sharp you said like sharp jaggedness to it, sort of.
Yeah, it's really lifeless in terms of styling, very concrete and pointy, and
Yeah.
not like comfortable. Whereas I feel like, as Arezou you mentioned, the Coruscant of the prequels is very homey in a sense, like the silver chrome kind of a vibe with like the club that Anakin and Obi-Wan walk into, and of course like Padme's residence. There's a certain like glossiness and comfort in that space that I don't feel in this space at all. And part of that is perhaps nostalgia, but part of that is just the way that they're conceptualizing parts of Coruscant differently.
Yeah, I could totally see that, and the way that we even think about it metaphorically, if we're meant to feel uncomfortable from that sort of brutalist take on Coruscant, it's the way that Mothma feels. It's probably the way that many other citizens of the Republic or of the Empire at this point feel, with the Empire's grip around them. Even like looking at the architecture of the ISB, right? Kind of falls in line with that as well. But I mean, Mothma says she feels like she's under siege. I think this is probably an environment where one wrong turn and you get stabbed in the side, and your fight is over. And I'm excited to see as we explore more of that in future episodes, like with the Senate and with this upcoming and very seemingly dramatic dinner scene that we're gonna have, that I'm so excited for. Oh my god!
The dinner happening? Is the dinner happening?
Yeah, I think it's like the scene from the trailer where she's talking to that guy and she's like, "Yeah, everybody's just not even thinking about what I'm doing."
Is that the dinner?
Oh, for sure.
I honestly, Brad's like, "Oh my gosh, slide more at the dinner," and I'm like, the dinner, like it's happening, not even like phase, like my brain just going like there are more episodes in this. Like I'm not even in a place where I'm like truly speculating, like because I'm just vibing, like I'm here for the ride. And like I'm thinking about, once we got to this kind of plot point, I'm like, oh, okay. So, Brad and I talked a little bit last time about how, Brad, you thought that the Imperial stuff where he's, in all the whole white, very THX energy space was perhaps flashback. And I'm like, no. This is, now I've realized, oh, that's what's coming up in the next 2 episodes with regards to this infiltration plot thing. But I literally just had no thoughts about the dinner. Where's my brain at? I don't even know. I'm just like here for Mon Mothma's outfits and, scenes I've already seen from the trailer. I'm ready for the Luthen spinny ship lightsaber thing happening with her laser.
Is that his inevitable escape from Coruscant when he's found out? I feel like his time is winding down. Like his cover will be blown at some point, I think.
He can only deal artifacts for so long.
Yeah. Which we'll get to those artifacts, because there's some stuff to talk about in that room. Speaking of Luthen, though, I would love to talk about the first conversation that he has with Cassian. I think it's one of the most important of the episode. And Arezou, you mentioned earlier just the fact that the way the show is written, there's some scenes that you kind of just take a step back and go, wow, I can't believe they worded it that way, or just the way they phrased that. Really, there's just so many good things here. So they're having this conversation about, what's next? Are you just going to drop me off? I didn't sign up for this next fight just to save my skin. And Luthen gives him this choice to say, hey, you could help steal an entire payroll of the Empire, and I'll pay you for it. Here is a kyber crystal as a down payment. If you want to scatter off and forget about it, I guess take it with you, but it means more to me than anything else, which I'm curious about. But this whole idea of Luthen having a feeling of what Cassian wants, and he knows it's to put a stick in the eye of the Empire and get paid for it, which I just love that. I love that visual, putting a stick in the Empire and the Empire's eye. And I don't know, there's just such small details in the writing. This whole conversation is brilliant.
My favorite part of this conversation, and maybe it's me just drawing parallels to Rogue One, but when Luthen and Cassian are having a discussion of Cassian saying that he doesn't know what Luthen is, separatist, guerrilla, this, that, and then they both come to the agreement that it's all the same thing, where Cassian's like, it's all the same to me, reminds me so much of Jin going, it's not a problem if you don't look up. He doesn't care who Luthen is, what he represents, because at the end of the day, it's all the same to him. And then for him to immediately be handed a Kyber crystal after that, I'm like, oh, the parallels just keep coming.
Right.
The Jyn Cassian vibes are strong.
Yeah. Like, I mean, listen, I ship it, but even from a non-ship perspective, just setting them up to be sort of on these parallel paths where he's lecturing Jyn about her apathy, but I'm like, but you weren't that committed to the cause only a few short years prior.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the Rogue One novelization, I feel like hints at that. Like Cassian recognizing that when he meets Jyn is in a place that he used to be in. And so if we kind of think of those parallels,
yeah,
I think that makes the case for that Rogue One relationship even stronger. Just the fact that he sees a lot of himself in her, you know. It's brilliant. They both come from similar places.
I think it's so interesting though, because I never would have said, oh yeah, Cassian was apathetic and not a part of the cause 5 years prior to this happening, before 2022, which is so fascinating to think about. And the magic of Star Wars is the way that we get these stories that help us contextualize other stories in the galaxy, and that's just how it keeps going. That's how the storytelling works. But I think when I heard I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, you pull away. I mean, I think we all probably took away something very different from that than the story that we're getting here, which is so interesting and makes that comment even more compelling when you go back and think about Cassian's determination, Arezou, as I mentioned, in Rogue One.
I love Luthen saying it's better to spit in their food and steal their trinkets. And Cassian says it's better to live, to eat, sleep, do what you want. But we see where that's gotten Cassian, right? He's sleeping in a transport in a junkyard. He's doing what he wants, which is at that point trying to find his sister and kind of look where the situation that it landed him in and the circumstances that he fell into. So clearly, as Luthen says, do you want to give it to all something real, or do you just want to keep carving off these useless pieces until there's nothing left of yourself? Do you just want to be like a husk at the end of the day, right? And so he's saying, he says to him, I imagine your hate. I imagine that no matter what you tell me or tell yourself, you'll ultimately die fighting these bastards. Which, by the way, we've gotten shit. We've gotten bastards. Luthen also tells him in this conversation, I didn't risk my ass for the Starpath unit. I did it for you. We're getting all the swear. Is this going to be the first F-bomb in Star Wars? I feel it coming.
I hope so.
No way. Is
I would love
the bet I'm placing.
I don't think they'll do it, but I feel like all of it so far has fit in so naturally with the dialogue that it doesn't jump out until somebody points it out.
It's so funny.
Is a good sign.
It's so funny because I've been feeling that actually with a lot of the elements of this series, and not in a bad way, because Star Wars can be whatever it wants to be. But whether it be that, or whether it be Luthen putting clearly just a washcloth on his face, just straight out of Bed Bath and Beyond, a steaming washcloth on his face, or Cyril walking with what are clearly just large industrial briefcases, as his luggage, and you're these things are so earthly in their way, but because it's in Star Wars, you're yeah, it's Star Warsy, but then you're oh, that's what that prop actually is. I'm oh yeah, I guess. It does. We do make these things on planet Earth. It makes it fun.
I agree. I felt that way when I saw Tim wearing socks in the last one. I'm we don't really talk about socks in Star Wars.
Right. And not to also be super weird about it, but Bix was also totally wearing a regular Earth bra.
Yeah.
You're bras in space.
There are bras in space.
Right, bras in space. They do exist.
Did you guys kind of point at the screen or have an aha moment though when
a Leonardo
when
DiCaprio moment?
Yeah, when he tells Cassian, you're gonna die fighting these bastards. I mean, it goes to show that Luthen does truly know who Cassian is and who he's gonna end up being. That's how much faith he has in this person. And it's interesting when he tells Vel, oh, he's disposable. If you have to sacrifice him or whatever, that's okay. But do you think Luthen actually truly believes that Cassian is disposable? Is he trying to just put up a front and trying to be sort of the confident one, throwing the plan into a drift at the last minute with this new arrival. Like, what is going on with like Luthen's understanding of Cassian at this point?
I feel like I have to start with did you point at the screen when Luthen said this? And I didn't point at the screen and have the Leonardo DiCaprio moment. I went, oh no, he is gonna die soon. Like, that's the reaction I had. I was like, you're
Clock's
saying
ticking,
this,
buddy.
You're saying this because they made the other movie 5 years ago. So I got sad. I was like, dang, this is where just a little pinprick of a reminder of where the show is going. But that's the question I wanted to respond to in that moment. Okay, I'll stop.
I think with him, like where Luthen is coming from, he went through a lot to get Cassian out, and I think at a greater personal risk than would be worth it if he genuinely thought Cassian was disposable. So I feel like him telling Vel that he's disposable is absolutely him just putting up a front, and that he genuinely believes whether Cassian dies on this mission or on a mission 5 years from now, that Cassian is the type of person who's going to give his all to any cause he is dedicated. So like, I don't think he knows for sure that Cassian's going to go really far in the rebellion, but I do think Luthen has that faith in him.
Yeah, and I think Luthen has done his homework. I mean, as we found out in these episodes, the last one and this one, he knows a lot about his personal life. He knows a lot of very specific details about his past. And you wouldn't spend all that time researching something or somebody if you did not actually care that much what happens to them. You know, or if you did not care like whether or not they lived or died. I mean, the fact that he like knew the details about Mimban, that he knew the details of what happened to his father, you know, he knows what's happened with his childhood. He's incredibly aware of the kind of person that Cassian is and what he's gone through in order to be the person he is. And I think he sees a potential, like a genuine, honest potential in him that Cassian can't see for himself because he's not connected to the broader, you know, network or perspective.
I just want to say on the Mimban point, we Luthen knows that he was actually a cook and not a fighter in the trenches. There's a very real possibility here that at some point in the Star Wars timeline, like Cassian Andor served Han Solo like slop or something, you know? That's all I'm saying. Like this could have happened.
It probably did, wasn't. How long was Han on Mimban for?
I don't know.
Let's find out.
Yeah. But like imagine just like Diego Luna serving slop to Alden Ehrenreich Han Solo. Like I would love that. I would love it. Just make it an after credit scene. I'll take it.
Give us that flashback. We ask for so little.
We're like, everything here has a purpose. I feel like when we go somewhere, it's meant to be there. And we're like, but also give us the flashback of Han Solo being served food by Cassian Andor, the cook at Mimban.
I don't need it in this show, but like, I do just want it as like a YouTube 40-second clip, you know, like
deleted scene, you know, here we go.
That's the announcement for the season 2 premiere date.
Right. Right.
A little video like
oh my God, when he dumps the slop on Han Solo's tray, it spells out the date.
Right.
Of season 2.
It's all very Ryan Reynolds humor. Like, you know, it's just the shot of Cassian just doing this over and over. And then he like misses a little bit or whatever. And like, it gets on Han's pants, and then we pan to Han's face and everybody's like, oh my gosh, him. And then you pan down to like the slop on the tray and it spells out the date. I think that would be Star Wars. I know you're listening right now. Feel free to steal that idea. I know it would go perfectly with the brand image, with the brand identity.
With the tone of this show.
Exactly.
Hey, Alden Ehrenreich, give him a paycheck.
Right. And just go for it, Disney and Lucasfilm. That's totally cool with me. I relinquish my rights to this idea.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much.
I also have no idea how long that this Mimban campaign was. I'm sorry. Wikipedia is not helping me.
It's all right. Well, you know, we're just all here for fun and the points don't matter.
Oh gosh.
Not having specifics mean we can tell ourselves that they bumped into each other.
Yeah.
I think it's just weird when you put like characters like this in the same time frame.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, but like I think it's weird for fans sometimes because you're like, okay, Harrison Ford is a lot older than Diego Luna, and I'm just gonna imagine Harrison Ford from 45 years ago, or Alden Ehrenreich just in general, and then I'm going to imagine Diego Luna right now, who's in his 40s playing a man that's in his early 20s, and it's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine.
The galaxy's rough, you know.
I mean, he looks great.
It's
like
a hard
I have
life.
no complaints from
He
me.
looks great.
But like, I'm like, this is all so silly. I'm having a great time. Star Wars, Bacon in space. Great stuff.
I have to ask you guys, do you think Vel is Luthen's daughter?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
No.
The way that they talk to each other and the way when he lands that ship and he's like, she's going to hate this idea. I know it, but that's okay. And I feel like he kind of looks at her through the binoculars a little longer. Like he's like staring at her for quite some time. So I feel like maybe he hasn't seen her in a while. And if they are related, I hate to like connect the dots between characters in Star Wars, but I have the feeling that they are father and daughter. And the way that he talks to her, he's like, look at me. You want to lead? This is what it means. You wanted this.
You know what?
And so I feel like they have a long history.
Put your bet on it. I'm going to put my bet against it. I'm inevitably going to be wrong, and I accept my fate.
But yeah, just the way they talk to each other, I got the sense, and he seemed to loosen up a bit too. Did you feel that at all, Arezou, or did that come across your mind?
It didn't occur to me till just now, but now that I think about it, if she's not like his daughter, she's definitely his like ward. He was her mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So she's been in this fight for a while, I'm guessing, and he's kind of been teaching her his ways. Like all those lessons he was giving Cassian, it's not the first time he's given that lesson. He probably gave it to Vel first. So he's definitely known her a long time, whether or not he's her father.
I found Luthen just such an interesting character, and how he is able to balance his very clear, explicit double life. I mean, the man literally puts on a wig to like play his imperial role. And so I just find it really interesting, and it makes me wonder how long he's been doing what he's doing now, and how long he's been playing this role that is not authentically him, because I feel like if you're an artifact stealer, you got to have a reputation built up over a time. This isn't something
Maybe he
just
started as an artifact stealer.
But he's got Mon Mothma's business.
He is a character I would love to learn every single thing about. Like, give him a book, give him a comic,
give him a podcast, yeah. A biography. But like, really though, because what was the comment he had? Some people call this like the peaceful
Temple of Patience.
Temple of Patience, yeah, of Coruscant. I'm like, okay, so it has a reputation of some sort, even if he's the only one creating that reputation. Other people, at least one other person has to like indulge him in that for him to be able to say that over and over, you know?
He's almost like the Walter White of Star Wars. Not that he's, cooking meth in the back with Kayla. But in the sense that like Walter White had this very split life, right? Like he is Heisenberg and he is Walter White. Like he is two very different people. And like for so long he goes without that secret starting to like slowly get out. And so I feel like Luthen's a similar character, like definitely not as evil. Like he's for the cause, for the right cause. But it is interesting how you balance those two personas. Watching him come out of his closet, like, and starting to do like the hand miming and like the smiling and like how is he going to greet, kind of trying to get into that mode. And we also see that with Mothma, like when they go in the back room and then he picks out the thing and they come out and she kind of stands there for a moment and like she like takes a breath, puts on the smile, walks out, and she's like, I would love that, and she's right back into that mode, that face. And we've seen that face on others before. We've seen it on Leia, right? It's something that Han recognizes on Leia and Princess and Scoundrel, and like it's the face of a rebel. Like there's so much risk involved with being in the rebellion, and like you can't give any sort of lead as to what you're truly doing behind closed doors.
I loved this one moment in the gallery where they go to the back to look at the artifact, And, Luthen's facing the camera and Mothma's got her back to the camera, and the camera is on one side of her and it swings around. And when it clears her other side, Luthen's gone from like his public smile to like his serious rebel face.
Yeah.
Using Mothma as the wipe. And I thought that was such a cool camera trick. Because, we could just see him drop his face, but it sort of went through this like Mothma transition almost, where they're in rebel mode now. And I just thought that was a really cool, like, it was just a neat little editing trick. Or
right.
cinematography trick, I guess.
And it really demonstrated like the quickness in which he falls out of that character and snaps into who he really is and what he's really there for. It feels so practiced and so specific, and the camera really highlights that, I think, in a really exciting way. I loved that whole scene, and kind of going back to when Luthen is in his ship and he, starts up the protocol and has the, hot steaming face towel. It is such a interesting thing to watch him act, like Luthen the character act, to be Luthen the artifacts dealer, juxtaposed with Cyril at his absolute lowest. Like, he's not acting. That man is in the pits of devastation.
And he's devastated.
It's so interesting to kind of watch these two stories together, because everybody is on their scale of acting or not acting. Like, Cyril's in the pits. He's having a rough go of it. He shows up to his mom's house and she slaps him and then hugs him. Very chaotic. And then Vel
the
is
moment
acting.
She slapped him, I had never laughed so hard in Star Wars. It was like 6:45 in the morning. She slaps him and I'm just like it was so great. So great.
It's we can just have a whole conversation about him walking sadly through the streets of Coruscant. You guys let me know if you want to have that. I'm happy to have it.
No, I will add to that. Like, he doesn't say any words in this episode except for mother. That's the only thing he says. It's the only thing Kyle Solar says in this entire episode, mother. And she promptly slaps him in the face after he says it. And then he walks inside. His mom being played by Catherine Hunter, who is amazing. She was in Harry Potter, played Mrs. Figs. Love seeing her, and Fiona Shaw. No, it was so good though, because the whole episode, I feel like he is really crumbling. He is like the facade that he's put up, the sort of like by the books do-gooder. I feel like it's starting to crack. Losing Morlana to the Empire and having the Empire now control the planet entirely. He is devastated. Like, do you guys feel like he is in for some sort of, I guess, the beginnings of a heel turn, or I guess you would call it a face turn? Which one's the good one? I think it's a face turn. Yeah. Do you feel like this is the beginning of that potentially? Do you feel like he's still going to try to be the do-gooder at the end of the day? Because I still have a feeling he's going to make one more attempt at least to like.
Well, we know that he
up.
talks. He puts on that suit with the tie that is in the shirt. We all laughing at the Star Wars version of a suit and tie in the one trailer. So we know he's going to talk, I think, to Dedra. So like he's still on this. He's still on this. I don't think he's going good anytime soon. That's for sure.
It'll be quite some time.
Despite half my brain really wanting it.
He's about to get worse before he gets better.
If he gets better at all. He might just Javert and die in his worseness, you know?
He's about to create an environment that is so toxic.
He wakes up every morning and says, oh, I'm about to create an environment that is so toxic every day.
He says it to himself in the mirror.
It's like if that meme were a person, that is Cyril Karn for sure. Or possibly Linus Mosk, who like raises his hand and then Blevins like, seriously? Put that hand down. Listen. The actors in the ISB are phenomenal. Like, I love that we were seeing this side of the Empire, because we've never seen the ISB in live action. We've only gotten like Governor Price and like, I guess, kind of Tarkin and Thrawn and Rebels, but like getting characters like Blevin and Dedra and what's his face?
Partagaz. Anton Lesser is Partagaz.
Partagaz, yes. Like the kind of Tarkin-esque figure of this group. I love it. These are such great performances, standout performances. These characters are like rich with personality. They're the worst types of people, and they're all kind of chomping at each other's heels, like trying to one up everybody, but I love that. I love that sort of like inside look at the Empire. It's fascinating.
Yeah. I like that we're clearly seeing within the Empire itself and with things like Pre-Mor that on paper they are the extreme. They're the extremist government, they're the fascist government, whatever, but within the system, they don't actually like people going to that extent. Like we see it with Cyril Karn, we see it with Dedra, like they want to go that extra mile and make sure that every rabble rouser is kind of shut down, and their bosses are like, it's not necessary. Just keep doing your job, like you're going too far. I think Dedra's got a lot more confidence than Karn does. Like she's just determined to do things sort of by the book correctly and won't let anybody say no, whereas Karn is substantially more chaotic than she is.
Yeah, and I think part of that kind of explanation of like don't go too far on this has to do with the image of the Empire and what image they can keep up amongst the people, or should they keep up amongst the people, because Karn is like ready to go for it, but he ends up causing more problems, than he started off with. And the whole reason he gets so upset in the beginning is because his superior officer wants to cover it up and wants to maintain the image of like, oh, these are good guys who were helping somebody and they got into a fight with the perpetrator and then they died. But it was a good cause. And there seems to be like, we suck and we are definitely oppressive in these systems, but also we have an image to maintain. It's a very specific, clean, crisp, you've seen our uniforms sort of image throughout the galaxy.
You could say he Cyril bossed too close to the sun.
How long have you been thinking about that joke?
About 5 seconds, maybe more. You'll never know.
It's pretty chaotic.
Cyril boss. We're gonna start it here. Cyril bossing.
Cyril boss. I don't know. We'll see.
Arezou, what were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, them having to maintain that image, like what Sarah was saying. I think it kind of shows that the people up at the top know they're not right. They just know they're in charge. As far as Karn and Dedra are concerned, they are not only in charge, but they're also correct. They are in the moral right. So however far they go shouldn't matter, because what they're doing the right thing. Whereas their bosses know they're not doing the right thing. They're killing people. They're imprisoning them. They're basically tempting people into rebellion. So they're like, we don't go that far. We don't ever wind up tempting people to that point. We just kind of leave it as is.
Yeah, that brings up that incredible line from Padagaz in that meeting of the ISB supervisors, where he's like, I
have it here if you want it on the doc.
Oh, where is it?
Yeah. So you're talking about the moment when he asks like what we do, and then she kind of cites the verbatim of their book.
Yeah, so she's like, we further security objectives and we're doing security. So there's like the corporate image of that. And then Padagaz comes back and is like, all wrong, bestie. Security is an illusion. You want security? Call the Navy. Launch a regiment of troopers. We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs. Which is interesting because he's first of all, within the current context, second of all, it's interesting because they're presenting different images of what they do, and what the image is, if that makes sense, because what Padagaz is saying is like, we treat sickness, we identify symptoms, seems to be large scale. Like, yes, you're locating germs, quote unquote, but at the same time, it's the illusion of curing the problem, of fixing the problem. It's all of the security theater, whereas Dedra really feels and believes, and as Arezou, as you said, like she really feels like she's in the moral right, and with that objective aligned with her goals, and then that's what she's going to go after. But that's not really the specific goal that they're actually functioning under.
And it's interesting because he says, like, the longer we wait to find those germs, whether they are inside or outside of the organization, the harder it's going to be to treat the disease. And then here we have Dedra like, hey, this thing that was stolen, the Starpath unit from Steerguard, I know it's the one on Ferrix. That's from my base. I think I should be in charge of this case because I can help locate the rebel cells. And he's like, no, we're not going to do that. Things get stolen every day, whatever. But it's like, he's literally making it harder to, what he says, like, quote unquote, find the germ. Right. And she's presenting these facts. And that's sort of the Empire's downfall. And what Luthen speaks to in the last episode when he talks about their arrogance, like they're so arrogant, they don't even pay attention to people like us, like me and you, Cassian. Right. That is ultimately the Empire's like kryptonite, is they just are so focused on like, hey, get your quarterly performance objective in, Dedra, like you're behind on it. Blevins already got his in, go do that, when she's like presenting him with the facts. Like not just a gut instinct, but also the facts.
I think it also speaks to their kind of preferred way of dealing with the disease. Because one of the other officers in the ISB was talking about how things are going better on the world that he's overseeing, and it basically sounded like he just killed everybody. I don't know if maybe I misread that, but he just kind of wholesale wiped out everybody. And he's like, yeah, that's what we mean. So he's not interested in rooting out the cause of anything like he says he is, finding the symptoms. He doesn't care. He wants to kind of wipe it out and call it a day. And that's not what Dedra's doing.
Right. It reminds me of the such a stupid reference. I'm so sorry in advance, but like the one TikTok where it's like, how do ibuprofen know where pain? Ibuprofen not know where pain. Ibuprofen everywhere. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's one of my favorite like TikToks, because the idea that it's suppressing everything and not just the specific issue. Mm-hmm. That you're experiencing, and like that's the kind of way that they're treating the sickness, quote unquote. Like, what if we can just eliminate all of the potential detractors, all the potential issues, as opposed to hunting down, using 12 men to hunt down Cassian Andor. Still one of the greatest kind of lines from one of the first 3 episodes. We have one, perpetrator. How many men should we bring? Like, and also
like the irony too, that the Empire might see that as a stupid thing for Cyril and his crew to have done. But in reality, we know Cassian Andor is going to be the one that steals the Death Star plans and beams it up with Jyn Erso to the rebellion, thus saving the dream, right? So there's like this little bit of this whole show is a butterfly effect of like, you underestimate the wrong person and that person might be the knife in your back later down the line, right? It's the rebellion's an ACL tear, like you said, and they're trying to treat it with ibuprofen. Doesn't solve the ACL tear. It just makes it feel a little better, but it's not doing much. Let's talk a little bit about Mothma, though. We talked about her in the shop, which, by the way, can we talk about the shop too while she's in there and like looking at some of the items? Yeah. There's a couple things in there that really, oh boy, I was freaking out about Starkiller, his mask, his armor. I was like, wait, what? What are we seeing right now? Starkiller, like from The Force Unleashed, his armor is just casually sitting in this museum. Like, is he
Sam
real?
Witwer, canon once again.
Well, it was a win for the video game fans today.
Yeah.
Right? Like between that and the crystal, which was apparently a video game reference that I didn't understand. But
totally missed that. See, there's something for everybody.
It's a reference to the Old Republic. But yeah, so good day for video game fans.
And then we've seen like the apparently Plo Koon's mask, the Utapauan cudgel. There's reference to you keep going. Now I'm just looking at stuff.
Yeah, which by the way, the Utapauan cudgel, he says it's dated to the 8th Archaic Sutlum, which is like interesting. I don't know what that means.
Give me the history. Give me the history books.
A new time measurement in Star Wars. We see the rocks, the hand, the mortis hands like what's left over from the wall that Ezra Bridger goes through into the world between worlds, and that whole place crumbled, and we know that Palpatine wanted those rocks taken, or however, I don't know, like somebody took those rocks basically, and they're in this museum.
But it's not a museum. You can buy anything in there. Again, weird historical things happening. Also, there's the
Calicori.
My brain is on. Is that what that is? The family
like
tree thing?
Ryloth. Yeah. It's not. It's not Hera's exactly, but yes.
No. But like it's that same style, and then you also have the Beskar armor.
Yeah.
Or the Mandalorian armor. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's kind of like Solo when you're like, you are Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen, because there's so much fun stuff to discover in this one particular room. Same within Solo.
I would love to know if Dryden Voss ever came by Luthen Rail's museum to buy something for his yacht. That'd be interesting. Yeah.
I'm declaring it.
The Solo connections here. Cassian Andor serving Han Solo food. Dryden Voss dropping by to buy some stuff. Luthen Rail.
It's not just a Rogue One prequel. It's also a Solo sequel.
Guys, we got Solo too. It happened.
There we go.
Oh
my gosh, it's great. But yeah, so Mothma gets her gifts. We know that she has a new driver. She knows that there's. Oh, did you find something else on there?
Okay, so we were talking about that over one Mothma shoulder to the other, right over Luthen's shoulder looks to be a triangular object, and then also a cube object. I'm not saying they are like holocrons, but I'm not saying they don't kind of look like holocrons, but also like is it the fudgety dudgety? It's the Wayfinder is the thing. And see, it's the Wayfinder versus the Wayseeker. It's too much for me. I can't handle it. It's too close. It also, looks like the Sith holocron and or Wayfinder. So I'm going to need the enhance version of that whenever somebody wants to put it through like an HD filter on the internet. I'm just going to start looking in the corners of these. Sorry, guys.
I was going to say, I just want to go back through the scene like frame by frame, because I feel like I missed all of this.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah, Mothma, she gets her gift for her shitty ass husband named Perrin. Let's talk about Mothma's life. I love, speaking to like shot choice, not only like the Mothma wipe on Luthen Rail's expression, but also the moment where she like walks in, she goes to the tree, she puts down her necklace, and then we just have like a couple moments of silence, and all we hear are her shoes walking through her apartment. And just, it's so, I don't know, I just don't feel like you don't get a lot of Star Wars where it's just quiet and there's no Star Wars music playing. Like, it's just nice to have like the quiet ambiance of that apartment.
Shot like that. Yeah, I mean it's quote unquote like unnecessary in a way, right? It's not something we need to further the plot, but it gives us context who she is and where she is and the way she exists in her space. And it's so interesting that she doesn't. Yeah, we move through that space, but like also her comfortability with that space. She clearly feels comfortable enough to take off like her rank badge or whatever, like the chain that she's kind of always wearing. She feels comfortable enough to kind of like undo the button of her jacket, but she doesn't feel comfortable enough to take off her shoes or like change into something less formal. So there's a certain level of like artifice that she or perhaps artifice that she's still, or a wall that she's still putting up. And before I go anywhere else, I have landed on another screenshot of this thing, and he definitely has artifacts in carbonite. So
yes,
that's it. Continue.
Yeah, they're like square shaped ones, right? They're not like the full rectangular slab. They're like smaller. I did see that. Yeah.
Okay, back to shitty Perrin.
Perrin.
Yeah, Arezou, you commented on my tweet about how I would totally wreck Mon Mothma's marriage. What did you make of that whole conversation with him and just who he is as a person and why she could do better?
I cannot for the life of me figure out why she's married to him. I was like running through the options. I'm like, okay, he's a high school sweetheart, or the fall of the Republic changed him, or most interestingly, he is friends with enough sketchy people that she feels being married to him gives her that extra layer that people don't look too closely because she's married to Perrin. So how radical could she be?
Mm.
So
Mm.
I
It's
don't know how long they've been married. That's why I'm not sure.
well, okay.
But
I actually have an answer from this from her in an interview, because she talked about, you know, she's this really interesting character who has this complex life, and she's been married since she was 16.
right. I remember this.
So I think that really makes it even more interesting because she's had to learn to, like, was this like a high school sweetheart sort of thing where they were just really young and in love and you can get married at your 16 and it's great, they've done it? Or was it something completely different? Like, how much of Mon's youth do we know about, and her status?
Her comment now to Luthen about Chandrila having all of these customs. Being like, "Yep,
Mm,
we've got a lot of them." And he's like, "It's such a rich culture." She's like, "Well, that's one way to put it." I'm like, was this part of
Mm.
it?
Like an arranged marriage almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be the case that
yeah.
their two families married, because we know her parents were in the government, so maybe that helped their status a little bit.
Yeah, like, I mean, it could just be a general animosity for my culture has too many events I have to buy presents for, but it could also be, that she's been married since she was 16 because of it.
Hmm.
And now with Perrin being the way he is, she's not happy with that.
It's interesting though too, kind of taken in that kind of context, is like the fact that the first thing she does when she does get home is take off her rank, or her clearly Chandrilan ceremonial. I'm just calling it a rank because that's what it feels like, but and I know there's a name for it, but I've just don't know what it is. Is she immediately like sheds that piece of herself? Who is she really is the question in all this.
She's a woman who can do better.
It's so true, and I mean, he seems to have almost no respect for her or her boundaries because he doesn't tell her. He doesn't tell her who's coming to dinner, which includes Sly Moore, who's the very scary lady with the very, very wide-eyed stare that I hope we see in the next episode. She sits next to Palpatine and Masameda in Revenge of the Sith, I believe. Ars Dangor, who's a character from Return of the Jedi, eventually. Will we see Masameda at the dinner?
Masameda. Oh,
Perhaps.
if Masameda.
Perhaps.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna lose my shit if Masameda shows up. Okay.
Well, we know these are all people
Because-
in the Vizier's private chamber, and he is the Vizier, so it's possible.
Yeah.
Sly Moore is terrifying and has a great kind of cape neckline game thing going on. But like, guys, if Masameda shows up, I have no idea why, but I will lose my shit. I think it's because my last name Haas rhymes with his first name Moss. That's very thrilling for me. That's probably part of it, but I just find his design very interesting. Anyway, Masameda, show up to the dinner. I'm gonna send him an invite if they haven't over in the Mothma household.
I feel like Perrin's got it covered.
Probably.
Perhaps.
He's a total shit.
Who else did he invite? Like, what else little shits he invite,
Yeah. Probably Tarkin.
He invited
He's like, hey, Tarkin.
Palpatine.
Hey, Vader,
Yeah,
come to
Palpatine
dinner.
himself.
Why not? Yeah. Yeah, the fact too that he's not only inviting these people to dinner, but like it's their home that they're having the dinner in, right? It's like it is like the truest violation of boundaries. And the fact that Mothma calls him out and says, like, you're rubbing elbows with people who just cut off shipping lanes to Gorman. We know from Rebels that Mon Mothma leaves the Senate because of the massacre of the Gorman people. So this is sort of the start of that. It is interesting though, like why are they married? And it's not that sort of like opposites attract. It's like, how do the opposites attract in this situation? I think you are onto something though. I think it's something cultural, or it's something where she's doing it to pad her persona, like her rebellious persona.
Not really a love match.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I love how she tests him too. She's like, if I'm listening at dinner, you're going to regret it. Like if I want to chime in on a conversation that I overhear, just letting you know. I love her. And then he says, why must everything be boring and sad? I'm like, dude, that's you. You're boring. and you're sad.
He's gonna be. She's taking his present back.
I love that. I love how she was like same day return.
It's going back. And I'm like, you just yeah, Perrin sucks. No offense to Perrin, but like literally all offense to Perrin.
All offense.
I'm so frustrated by him, and I've known him for like 4.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Lastly here, before we wrap up, let's talk about Aldhani and I guess like what to look forward to next week. So it seems like this 3-episode arc is going to be based around the mission to this garrison that's on this planet. I'm so glad they shot this on location, but also learning about this planet's tragic history and the way that it was colonized by the Empire and how the Empire came in, claimed a lot of the lands, and like displaced these indigenous people who live there. These, they had all these like very rich cultural traditions, such as the Makani Bray Dani, which was like the Eye of the Aldhani, when they went to go see the meteor shower, and thousands of people came for the celestial event, and like learning all those bits and pieces of the planet. And I got to imagine like Cassian hearing some of that story connects to him being from Canary, and knowing Canary was also like colonized by like the Republic / separatists, and then eventually was destroyed in a mining disaster by the Empire. So like I think part of Cassian's drive for this mission is maybe just the fact that it's another planet not so unlike his that suffered sort of a similar fate in some ways. Not quite to the extreme of Canary, but did you guys get that kind of sense? Like, what do you think about Aldhani and like learning more about it, and also like what it could mean for Cassian's like motivation?
I don't think Cassian's there yet. I think we're seeing the parallels. I don't think he does. I think it's still a job for him at this point, especially because the episode ends with them giving him a lot of homework. But I think because we know, like, to everything you just said, that this planet has suffered a lot at the hands of the Empire, the colonization, the fact that most residents were either indoctrinated into the Empire or probably killed. I think as they go on the mission, Cassian is going to start to see those parallels, and then that's what really draws him into the cause. But as of where he is right at the end of episode 4, I don't think he's there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
I would agree. But I think, just kind of learning about Aldhani, I'm like, colonization, forcing people to leave their home. All of these ideas are very ever present in the Star Wars galaxy and in our own. And it was interesting how plainly Vel talked about it. Really, really plainly, really understandably, I think, for any viewer. And so it was interesting to just hear the ways in which the Empire was working on that planet and altering the culture and life, everyday life of Aldhani for the people.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where the next couple episodes go. And to Arezou's point, does Cassian draw those lines, and does it fuel his need to succeed in the mission? I get the impression that the cell that's there, they're not from there originally. They were kind of placed there by the rebellion or whatever the early formings of the rebellion are. But they're dedicated to the cause, and what the Empire is doing to these planets is terrible. So they see that and they recognize that, and they want to fix it and blow right back at the Empire for doing it. So I can't wait. I can't wait to see what this like whole breakout situation is. We saw the shots in the trailer, like with the big ship flying through the meteor shower. So I imagine that will either be like maybe the climax of episode 5 or episode 6. Time will tell, but it looks beautiful when it happens, but also kind of chaotic and terrifying.
I'm excited to see this beautiful curtain of meteors. That was my thought when they were describing it. I'm like, well, I hope we get to see this like properly,
right?
Not just,
But maybe we should,
Yeah.
I just feel like it's so interesting that we're stopping this conversation here, kind of not knowing what's coming. And I know, conversations have been had to death about the bingeable model versus the week-to-week model. But I almost wish that they were releasing this in arcs. Arc 1, wait a couple weeks. Arc 2, wait a couple weeks. Because I feel so unsettled about where we're ending. Like I feel like we're ending on a very open note here about where the story is going, and I want to know how it concludes. I want to see everything that happened in the trailers. Now. I want to see it now.
Yeah, another week, unfortunately. Okay, so before we wrap up, one final thing here. We're going to try something kind of weird and interesting and different, and hopefully it succeeds. We're introducing a new segment on the show called Andor. So how it goes. Catchy, right? Okay, so
Love it.
we're going to have our and we're going to have our or. Okay, so we're going to go around the table and everybody is going to give 2 moments in the show that they loved. Top 2 moments of this week. So it's going to be like X and Y. Those are my 2 favorite moments. And now the or is a question that I posed to the group of the week. So let's start with the or, I guess. Or actually, which one should we start with, Sarah? Because you know what I'm gonna. I think you know what I'm gonna ask. Let's do the ands first. Maybe.
Let's do the what,
The
no.
or?
Well,
I guess we should go in order of the word.
you got to and
or.
then or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So ours.
You know, we're testing it. You know, we're putting it to the audience, seeing what they think. You know, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Arezou, with very heavy emphasis on the and portion of your statement, what are your 2 favorite moments from the episode?
2 favorite moments are the camera pan behind Mon Mothma, focusing on Luthen, and the latter conversation that Dedra and oh my god, Levin have.
Yes.
Yeah, those are
That's a good one. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sarah, what's yours?
My and this week is Mon Mothma's incredible outfit and the one specific line where she says, you know, don't lecture me about vulnerability. No one's more vulnerable than me. And Cyril Karn getting slapped in the face by his mother.
Oh,
There's something just about him being so sad and then like walking up to his mom's door and just getting hit in the face.
Yeah. I'm going to have to steal one of yours, unfortunately. But yes, my 2 moments would be Cyril Karn getting hit in the face by his mom and Luthen Rail turning around again out of his closet and he's just getting ready. He's getting in the mode. He's getting ready for the smiles. I love it. I just never thought Stellan Skarsgård would be such a standout. Like I knew he would stand out, but to the extent that he is and that I'm obsessed with him, I'm obsessed. Like this character is amazing. Okay. So we got through our ands and now we get to or. This week's or, you have to choose between Cassian with a beard or Cassian without a beard. Which do you guys prefer? What's the hot take of the week?
This is such a question.
I know.
I'm going to say Cassian without the beard, because without the beard means he's got just a little bit of scruff. You know, because he didn't get like a super close shave. So
right.
His version of without a beard, it's like it's a little more rugged. So
it's got that 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah.
He's
really rocking the 5 o'clock shadow. So
yeah.
So I'm gonna say without a
the
beard.
lie. I can't find it. It's not there. I just to be a little contrarian, I'm gonna go with the beard. I feel like the beard's a classic look for him, you know? So I'll go beard.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna go no beard. I thought going into the episode I would be like pro beard. I still am pro beard, but without beard, you just get to see his jawline. Diego Luna's got like a nice jawline.
Right.
Like, you know, so I love a guy who can show that off, is all I'm saying.
The beard hides too much of his handsome face.
Yeah.
That's a completely fair point. I can't argue with that.
It's a very nice beard though, I will say, but
it's a good beard on him. It's a good look.
I like to see that face.
Yes. So that is our new segment and or who knows if we'll ever do it again.
Very successful, I would say.
If you never do it again, I'll feel responsible for its failure.
Okay, so we have to do it again.
We have to do it at least once more.
We got someone to blame. All right. Cool. Oh yeah, we could do it one more time and then you don't know whose fault it is.
You're like,
so yeah. Well, yes. Next week we'll be here again talking about Andor. Arezou, thank you so much for joining us for episode 4. Appreciate it. Appreciate having you on the podcast again. Always a pleasure. Where can our listeners find you? What are you doing for Andor and what else you got coming up?
So you can find me at Arezou Amin on Twitter. You can find my show Space Waffles at Space Waffles Pod on Twitter. We've got our Andor series, Andor the Relentless. Technically every Tuesday. We were a little late on the first episode just because life got in the way, but every Tuesday. So yeah, be sure to check that out. It'll get you caught up on last week before the new episode of Andor on Wednesdays.
Excellent.
Awesome. Yeah.
Excellent.
I gotta say, everybody's podcast series name for the Andor series has just been so damn good. Like, everybody pulled out the stops this time. Like, Andor the Relentless is just, and then like the design. I don't know if Candace did it. Did the
I
design
cannot
for
take
the
any credit for the name, for the design. It was all like,
amazing.
Go for it. I love it.
it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. So yeah, thank you. Everybody go check out Space Waffles. The more Star Wars podcasts in your ears, the better. So Arezou, thanks again. We appreciate it. As for us, you can find us here every single week, like I said, on Andor Candor. We'll have more guests in the future. And you can follow Sarah and I and the podcast on all of our socials, including Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, we also we are on many podcast feeds. So definitely subscribe to the show if you can. Follow all of our weekly recaps of Andor and join us on this 12 episode journey. Only 8 left.
We also have a Patreon where tiers start at just $1, and we are so grateful to all of our patrons. They are Amy, Brian with an I, Brian with a Y, Cheryl, Clay, Danny, Davis, Dylan, Donnie, Huang, Jen, Knights of Ren, Leanne, Levi, Lucy, Luke, Lindsay, Randy, Rob, Saber Bouquet, Sky Talker, Steven, Travis, Tom, and T. Thank you all so much, and thank you everybody for listening all the way to the end of this episode.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arezou. Thank you, listeners. And until next week, may the Force be with you always.